Okay, so you've just received an email or a call from the mainstream media wanting to get a commentary from you about your research. Do you know what to do? Today we're talking about how to talk with the mainstream media, a step-by-step guide to effective science communication. Hi, Dr. Ken Dutton-Regester here, and today we're talking about what happens if you get approached by the mainstream media. Now, the further you get into your career, and you don't really have to be that far to be approached by the mainstream media, but the chances are the further you are and the more papers that you publish, eventually someone will be knocking at your door, either via email or via phone, trying to get some commentary or perspective about your research on a up-and-coming finding or topic of interest. Now, if you've never done this before, it can be incredibly daunting. And usually that's because it's a new process and you've never really thought about it. And when you're unprepared, it leads to nerves. But it's actually quite a simple process once you know what to do. So today we're going to be listing this step-by-step guide in what happens when you get approached by mainstream media so that you're more prepared and that you can deliver all that research and news or whatever commentary that you want to do with strong confidence. So let's get into it. All right, point number one is to confirm the details. So as soon as you get approached, whether that's via email or more importantly, usually via telephone call, it's important to try and understand what the media outlet is trying to get. Is it a radio interview? Is it a TV interview? If it's a radio interview, is it a short piece? Is it something that they just want a soundbite, so like a 5-second sound clip? Or do they just want to use your perspectives and fill out a larger piece of article that they're doing? So maybe they're not even going to use much of your content that you tell them. They're more using it as a way to get more basic information. Or is it going to be a 5 to 7 minute intense one-on-one conversation? All of these things, you really need to know what platform or what they're trying to get out of it. So that allows you to prepare accordingly. Now, at this time, it's worthwhile also getting the details of who's approaching you, as well as if there's a particular slant or is there a particular reason why they're reaching out. So sometimes if you're in a very highly controversial field, maybe sometimes they'll be coming at you from a very honest perspective, or maybe sometimes they're trying to get a very counter argument, trying to portray particular people in certain different ways. So if you can find that information out now, that's probably your best chance. So once you've done that, you then need to do point number 2, which is delay your response. So it can be tempting when a media outlet approaches you that they want to talk to you right there and then, but usually that's not recommended. What you can do is, because you're a scientist, you can say, you know what, I'm currently in the middle of an experiment. Can I call you back in an hour to 2 hours and then we can discuss further? I'm really keen to be involved. I just need to finish this experiment. This is a really great way to end the conversation and get back to them and use that time to prepare and get in the right mindset. So even if you don't do experiments, maybe you can say that you're in the middle of a meeting. Whatever you want to do is just delay it by an hour to 2 hours. Just buy yourself a little time. The important thing here is to make the delay very short and make it sound like you're going to approach them very, very soon, that you're just in the middle of something. Now, tip number 3, as soon as you hang up the phone or finish writing an email, you want to contact your external relations team or communications team. So a lot of universities and institutions have these teams on site that help deal with the media. Now, often a lot of these interview requests will come through those channels, but sometimes you do get approached out of the blue. So if you're in this situation, make sure you inform your external relations or communications team. They'll be able to fill you in with some more details and maybe also help you prepare for what you're going to say. And this can be including from particular talking points or things to avoid or what not to avoid. They'll also calm you down a lot as well, because I know it can get very nerve-wracking when you've just received a call and your mind's racing as to, what are you going to talk about, or what's that stress going to be like when you're in the middle of an interview. They'll be able to calm you down and run you through some extra steps that may not be included in this list. So definitely reach out to your external relations or communications team. Okay, from there, you're going to want to formulate your script or get a bit of a response outlined. It's definitely worthwhile, once you know what they're trying to look for, of writing down some of the key topic or conversation points that you want to get through in that conversation. It's very tempting to just be able to go into it and just wing it. Some people can do it, but usually that's very experienced people. What's better, particularly if you're starting out, is to write down your key topic points that you want to get across and have that physically in front of you as you do that interview, if it's over the phone, for example, to really allow you to make sure that you tick off all those different points. It can be very surprising how quickly an interview can go from one direction to a completely different direction, and having this to refer back to and be able to take the conversation back towards is really important. Now, obviously, if you're doing this via digital communications in terms of email, or they're just getting an opinion piece that you can write your responses down, this urgency of having the points in front of you isn't as much or as needed as if you're doing a telephone interview. But then you're still going to need to prepare and write nice, concise information that's short and sweet. And again, your external relations team will be able to help you out with this stage, making sure that you put the right information at the top. Because often as scientists, what we think is important is not really what media people or the general public find important. So there's actually a bit of a different shift in the type of information that you want to present. So again, lean on your external relations and communications team to help you draft your response. All right, so you've got a bit of a draft, you know what's going on. Now it's time to get back. And the important thing here is to get back quick. So you don't want to leave a reporter with very extended amount of times unless they've explicitly said it's not time urgent. But in most situations, reporters and the mainstream media are working on incredibly tight deadlines. So this means you want to get back to the reporter within a couple of hours, usually at the max. It's possible they may have a particular time they do want to interview, but definitely touching base and contacting them again, 1 to 2 hours after their first approach is really important. And what you can do is you can use this time to potentially get some extra information that you might have forgotten to get in that first conversation. Because I know definitely when you first get approached, you're not really thinking it, you're not in the right mindset, and you may have missed critical things that external relations team or communications team may have asked you, but you forgot to write down or forgot to ask. So having this second contact very soon after the first one will allow you to clarify any remaining questions and really set up a time, if it's not going to be done straight there and then, as to when you're going to do the interview. Now, step number 6, pretty obvious, do the interview or do the report. So here you're going to want to use that list that's potentially in front of you if you're doing a phone interview to really go through your conversation or talking points. So through the secondary contact, you're going to have a better idea of what the format is going to be. And so if you're doing a telephone interview, either see if you can do this directly in a studio and have that sort of highly polished sound if it's possible, or if you're doing it via the telephone, make sure to use a landline. It's very tempting to use a mobile phone, but the connection is usually quite poor, or there's also the possibility that the line might drop out. It's a lot better to use a landline in this situation because the sound quality is going to be a little bit better, and there's definitely a lot of evidence to suggest that good sound quality improves the optics of how you're perceived by those listening. So priority, if you can get into the studio, do that. If not, use a landline. Worst case scenario, do a mobile phone if it's a radio type interview. Obviously, if it's a film crew, that's going to change a different situation, and here you're going to be able to have to set up an area potentially at your institution where they can potentially do that. These are all different things that external relations team will help out with, but you definitely want to have that prepared in advance so that you're not stressed at the time of the interview. So do the interview, do it well. So step number 7, or tip number 7, is to remember that practice makes perfect. Now, the first couple of times of doing these type of media interviews, it's going to feel very unusual and your stress levels are going to be through the roof. That's okay, and that's normal. It really does take a lot of repetition and a lot of practice to really get natural and feeling normal in that type of environment. Now, if you're lucky in terms of releasing a paper and maybe you had a press release associated with it, and it happens to get picked up by mainstream media, you might be doing several interviews in one day. Now, I find this is a really great way to quickly build your skill set, and you'll find that the first interview compared to the last interview of the day is completely different. The first one, even though you've got those talking points, it's probably a little bit clunky, but by the end of the day, you've nailed it. You've got these nice sound bites, you know, these little catchphrases that people really find interesting, or maybe it makes people laugh, and that interview at the end of the day is usually really polished. So just remember, it's not natural really to be doing media unless you've been trained, and practice makes perfect. So make sure you take up any opportunity to do so. So step number 8, or more likely a tip number 8, is to drop everything when you get approached for a mainstream media interview. Now, it's very tempting as academics and researchers to feel like you're busy doing experiments. But you have to realize that mainstream media, when you get approached, is usually incredibly rare. So when it does happen, you want to make sure that you take that opportunity. Make sure to reshuffle your day if it's possible, or at worst case scenario, do your experiments late at night, but prioritize getting back and committing to these mainstream media requests. Again, these are things that will help you build your profile and will look good on your CV and will build your skill sets. And because they are so rare, you definitely want to prioritize doing them. So make sure to prioritize doing mainstream media interviews and drop everything, or be prepared to drop everything at a moment's notice. So finally, the last tip is to consider registering your name on an experts list. So there's a number of different expert lists out there that allow researchers or academics to put their name in these databases so that when journalists or reporters are looking for expertise in certain areas, they know where to go. So one example that I can think of that I'm registered in is Scimex. Now, I'm not sure if this is an Australian-based media platform, but I'm sure there's different media platforms to whatever country that you are. Just do a bit of a Google, but it's worthwhile spending a bit of time putting in your profile, putting in your expertise, and if you can, and you have the opportunity or the ability to do so in that platform, put some examples of some of the work that you have done as you begin to build it. So if this is something of interest to you and you really want to build those skill sets or become more of a presence within the mainstream media, put your name on one of these lists because it will help you get more referrals and more journalists asking about you and your research and how you're contributing to the general community. Now, if you are passionate about science communication and you want to know how science communication can make you a better scientist, check this link up here. Lastly, if you are curious about where I'm currently filming, we are in a cancer biology themed escape room, and you can find out more about that project here. Lastly, if you did like today's video, make sure to give me a pipette thumbs up, and remember, nothing ventured, nothing gained.